And welcome back to Punchline. We're still with the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs. Let's talk about one of your big agendas for this year, which you've talked about, the UN Security Council. We saw at the end of last year China's support for Kenya's push to have a seat at the table. What do you believe Kenya will be able to contribute on global security matters in an active way that it is not able to, outside of that seat?
Well, and the UN Security Council, as I've indicated, is one of our big files this year. And we will be going to the Council after almost 26 years if we get the vote, and which I am confident we will. The reason we think that, and it's not just us, I mean, the people that are going to be voting for us believe that we will add value to the Council. Add value to the Council because we are tested, because of our competencies, because of our experience, and because of the nuance we will bring to this Council. Let me just give you an example. If you think about the ongoings in the Indian Ocean Ring today, about 60% of commercial trade, global commercial trade, comes through the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. We are seeing a lot of interest in this region. And so the way in which the geostrategic interest balance out in this region becomes very important for stabilization of global trade, for stabilization of our own prosperity agenda, our own economic development as a country and as a region. But we are also in the Horn of Africa, which has been a very fragile region, whether it is ecologically or in terms of peace and security. And so sitting in the UN Security Council away in New York, we believe we will bring some of these nuances to the decision-making table of the UN Security Council.
You've talked about experience, and of course our unfortunate experiences with terrorism and the Al-Shabaab. What specific, when you look at the way the world has approached terrorism, and the US particularly taking the lead on that because of the 9/11 events and thereafter, what do you think the world is getting right or wrong? What's the nuance that we bring? What's the perspective on our experience, do you believe?
Well, one of the things that, a nuance that has to come through is that the network of terrorism is not national, is not geographic specific, okay? But governments are organized territorially. And for a long time, people have been thinking about boundaries, responses within boundaries. We've not gotten very good at transnational networking, and yet the terrorists are able to work across territories and in networks that go beyond of themselves. We can see the footprint of the Al-Shabaab going southwards, all the way maybe to Mozambique. We can see, if you're talking about Boko Haram, the entire of the Sahel. We can see ISIS even footprints into Somalia and things like that. So we have to get better at working together, and this is really key, sharing information because of the movement. And this is even more needed now because of the digital advances that we've made. They are recruiting within the digital space. That's where the recruitment is taking place. That is where part of training is taking place. So we have to be good. We have to get better in the cyber world as governments. That's the other thing. And there's a lot of conversations around cybersecurity, around we are talking to business, we are talking to the investors in the digital world to say, what is their participation in order to reduce this space for use? We have to look at the democratic space. A country like our own, which has elected for itself to deepen our democratic credentials, we have seen that the protected spaces, churches, schools, can actually be used for training. So we have to get better at protecting those democratic freedoms, democratic spaces, and insulating them from being appropriated by the terrorists and their networks. So those are some of the areas that we have to get better.
And because Somalia clearly is one of the key issues that if you like, one of the key experiences we have engaging in Somalia. You have the UN Security Council on the 20th of August rejecting our request to designate the Al-Shabaab as a terror network under Resolution 1267, which includes groups, I believe, like Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIL, and others. Why was this critical for Kenya? Why did we want them to be listed under this resolution, whereas Al-Shabaab is already sanctioned, I believe, in the 751 Committee of the UN Security Council? How would that have empowered the fight on terror?
Because we believe that there is no good and bad terrorists. There is no small and big terrorist. Right. Because terrorism is driven out of the same ideology. They have the same objectives. And in our case, remember that this last push we made for listing was after Dusit attack. And after the Dusit attack, in fact, in our case, they come out and say it is us who did it. So it is not circumspect. They say we've done it and we are going to come back. We believe that we have to bring the full set, the full kit of sanctions, the full kit of tools to reduce the space for the Al-Shabaab to function. Now, the refusal, the failure to do this sanctioning was not based on a disagreement that this is a terror group. Right. Rather, it was being framed from a humanitarian argument that this would minimize the humanitarian access for people in Al-Shabaab held territories. Right. Now, Southern Somalia, yes, exactly. Our view is that we have to be sure that humanitarian activities and humanitarian assistance is not appropriated by the Al-Shabaab and other terrorist networks, because in essence, we would be part of that network.
Is that what you believe is happening right now?
There's a possibility, yes, it is possible, because in fact, most of these territories are held firmly by Al-Shabaab. So it is not inconceivable, and we know this has happened elsewhere. So it is not inconceivable. What we are saying, though, is that you cannot balance out a humanitarian argument with a terrorist argument. The question is Al-Shabaab a terrorist organization? If the answer is yes, then the world has an obligation to bring all measures that will reduce and destroy Al-Shabaab, because their objective is to actually kill and destroy and create mayhem.
Right. And you know, in October, maybe the previous year, President Kenyatta talked about why Kenya went into Somalia to begin with in 2011. And he said that we will continue our presence in the country until the restoration of full security in Somalia. Security even for Somali nationals who are, you know, under the oppressive Al-Shabaab regime. You know, when does Kenya expect this will be achieved? Can there be an end date on the war on terror in Somalia? And do you believe, with you having to go back to the Security Council and push for such strong measures on the Al-Shabaab, that our engagement, Linda Inchi, has been successful?
Well, you will know that the Kenyan forces in Somalia today are under AMISOM. Correct. They are not under Linda Inchi, because that was an operation that ended. And we were requested by both the region and the UN Security Council to rehat, and we did. So we are operating in Somalia as part of the African Union mission. We have been very consistent and vocal about the need for Somalia to build its capacity, its security capacity, so that it can secure itself, but also secure the borders of its neighbors, you know, because that is why, for us, it's an important thing. You will know more than 80% of attacks in our country have had the proximate relationship with the border with Somalia because of the challenges. And this is why we have stood a number of capabilities, including the border control units, you know, to look at the border and to work with Somalia and build this capacity. We believe this is a process that can be accelerated, you know, and we have been calling on partners repeatedly to focus on this. And that is why we support the Somali security sector program. That is why we've been urging partners to undertake training that transfers those competencies, and we have seen some progress, even including with special forces and teams. But we think this process can be fast-tracked, can be fast-tracked. And part of our agenda would be really to push for that to happen.
But there can there be an end date?
There has to be. There has to be. Well, the end is exactly how the President Kenyatta put it. It's until there is competencies to hold the territory and to secure us.
Are we going to find ourselves in the position that the U.S. found itself in when trying to withdraw from Afghanistan and other places, that once you go in, it's difficult to go out without leaving the opportunity for more mess? And this is why I ask about whether you think Linda Inchi was in fact successful. Have we been able to diminish
we have. I mean,
attacks?
certainly. I mean, and I'm sure you know, even yourself, that there is a diminished sense of insecurity in our territory. When we went in Somalia, you will recall that the threat, people were being picked from refugee camps and other places as workers, health workers and people like that. So there is no doubt.
Doctors were picked just over a year ago.
Well, listen, abductions, first of all, as I have said many times, we abhor the fact that medical staff anywhere would be picked, would be abducted. This does not happen even in war. First of all, that's a matter that must be condemned by everybody in the strongest terms. Even when countries are at war, there are cadres of people that are never subject to abductions. So this is just an indication of the level of terror and disregard for life that we have seen with this group, which is part of the reason we think they should be sanctioned very, very heavily. But having said that, our ability to detect, our ability to stop, our ability to divert, our ability to secure has grown exponentially. And I think you will remember even the commentaries after Dusit, for example, and the reaction time, right, and the ability to save people and property and things like that. So we have gone a long way from, say, the last attack that we experienced, massive attack that we experienced at Westgate. So there's been a great improvement in terms of securing, and that is why, even in terms of confidence, global confidence, you have seen, we have just finished a year where we have had close to 40,000 delegates coming through Nairobi in international conferences. That is a vote of confidence by the world. So there is no doubt that whereas this threat is not just a Kenyan threat, it's a global threat, our sense of management, our sense of prevention, our sense of detection, our sense of response has improved a great deal.
My final question is, at what cost? Why has the Kenyan government refused to publish, to acknowledge the numbers of Kenyan Defense Forces who have fallen in this quest? U.S. government, for instance, does this to help the population understand the price of freedom, to honor the lives of the fallen. Why isn't Kenya keen on this?
And there are doctrine issues here, but more fundamentally from where I sit, it does not matter whether it is one Kenyan, one Kenyan is one too many. No Kenyan should be dying from a terrorist attack anywhere in the world. Nobody should. And that is why we have stood to condemn. That is why we have joined every coalition that is working against any form of terror. That is why we have focused on programs to try and counter radicalization. That is why we have promoted democratic values so that we can have a country that is tolerant to one another, because that is how it begins, So all these things add up. There is no life, not one, that should be lost in these circumstances.
What would you like Kenyans to expect in terms of your representation of us to the world? Well, not necessarily in your position for the next decade, but Kenya's policy for the next decade.
I think every Kenyan should be very proud of the level of recognition, global recognition. We are a good brand globally. We are pursuing and leading in building consensus around big global agenda, whether we are talking about climate change, whether we are talking about sustainable development. We are leading as far as green energy is concerned. We are leading in terms of digital and innovation technology. Kenyans should walk tall because we are standing tall among the community of nations.
Diplomats can punch. Take it from me. Thank you so very much, Cabinet Secretary, and have a happy start to the new year.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, and so I wish you the same.
Thank you, and thank you for watching Punchline. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye for now.